Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are bringing you another great game of CEDH. This was another long game and it really showed that the only life that matters is the last one. But before I get on to that, time for the ad read. Ever wanted to get a commander pod in on spelltable but couldn't find enough players? Missing that last one player to fire a game on your Discord server? Well, try mtg Matchmaker, the first cross-server webcam mtg matchmaking Discord bot. Unlike other similar bots and paid services, mtg Matchmaker queues commander players across all installed Discord servers, so you can keep your Discord community while connecting with other players from others. With the launch of version 1.0, mtg Matchmaker has officially left beta and is continually being updated with new features. To learn more, check out the quick start guide that I'll have linked in the description of the video and start queuing up. Also, if you're interested in playing with us, hop on our Discord. We have an ever-growing community and we'll love to talk MTG or whatever strikes our fancy. And another benefit is we often let people know when we play and would love to meet some new people. Alright, block there, kill that. Oh, that is trample. Guess I'm just dead on board. First up, we have MTG Loots, who has brought Malcolm Tymna. This deck has gone through quite a few changes, and this version is Esper Control. It uses both Malcolm and Tymna to gain extra value by running additional evasive creatures. Next up, we have Fernando piloting Kenrith, the Return King. This is a 5-color creature control list that aims to generate a lot of mana and abuse Kenrith's many abilities while staxing the board with plenty of annoying creatures. In the third spot, we have Hidden Planet X, and a new commander to the channel. Ghave, Guru of Spores, is an Abzan ad naus list that aims to assemble a multitude of different combos that work with the commander. And bringing up the rear is Jimmy, piloting Marath. This Naya control deck looks to use creature-based stax cards, along with Marath, to slow down his opponents until he can assemble one of his own combos. It's a great deck that preys on both combo and creature-based strategies. But without further ado, let's get on to the gameplay. Loot starts off the game with a flooded strand into a jeweled lotus, which he cracks for blue to cast his commander Malcolm. And he finishes his turn by cracking his fetch for an underground sea and casting a Cloud Pirates. Fernando doesn't want to be left behind and explodes out with a polluted delta into a mana crypt. But the foot stays on the gas as he taps the crypt for a Soul Ring, and then cracks his fetch for a Tundra to cast an Eidolon of edhrec. Damn.
I'm sad.
Hot diggity.
Hidden ends up having a much simpler turn as he plays a forest and casts the Birds of Paradise. Jimmy, seeing the simplicity, likes the plan, and he also plays a forest and casts the birds as well.
Wait, what?
Bird is
Someone just say that?
Bird is the word.
Pass the turn.
Lutz plays a mana conflux and moves to combat. He hits Fernando for 2 and Hidden for 1, along with Malcolm producing 2 treasures, which helps him cast Tymna on his second main phase. Fernando starts off by taking 3 damage from the crypt and casts Kenrith. He has a Gaia's Cradle and then hits Hidden for 1 with the Eidolon and passes. Hidden unfortunately misses his land drop but plays a Llanowar Elves with his forest and hands the turn over to Jimmy. Jimmy doesn't follow Hidden this time and plays a Plateau.
I'm plateauing. And
Don't worry, Jimmy, I think you're getting better every day. And finishes his turn by tapping out for his commander Marath. Lutz immediately heads to combat and sends Malcolm at Fernando, the Cloud Pirates at Jimmy, and Tymna at Hidden. But before blockers, Fernando uses his Gaia's Cradle along with Kenrith to put a +1/+1 counter on Hidden's elves, in hopes of blocks. After a few minutes of discussion, Hidden decides to trade his Llanowar elves for Tymna. And question for the viewer, what would you have done? Do you think this was the right play? Considering Hidden missed his land drop, would you still block to deny Lutz a 3 draws off Tymna? Let us know in the comments down below. But back to the game. Lutz goes to his second main and casts a Necropotence, using a treasure he gained from combat. He pays 8 life to it and goes down to 30. He moves to his end step and puts the cards in hand, and then discards and exiles due to hand size. Fernando loses his mana crypt trigger and heads to combat. He attacks Lutz for 5 damage with the Kenrith, and follows it up by casting a Wild Growth on his Tundra. At his end step, Hidden tries to cast a Whirly Tutor, but Lutz counters it with a Flusterstorm. Hidden draws and sadly just casts the Hushbringer and ends his turn missing another land drop. Jimmy untaps and plays a Plains' land. After some consideration, he decides to cast a Luminarch Ascension, even knowing it'll paint a big target on himself. Lute skips his draw and plays and cracks a Windswept Heath. He grabs a Tundra and follows it up by attacking Malcolm at Fernando, creating a treasure token. He then casts Grim Monolith, while Jimmy comments on the similarity of MTG and Pokemon art.
That Grim Monolith looks like that Pokemon Nose Pass.
Lutz finishes by putting 3 life into the Necropotence, getting the cards at his end step. And in response, Fernando uses Kenrith to draw a card and puts a +1/+1 counter on himself, while Jimmy gets a counter on the Ascension. Fernando finally wins a Crypt Trigger and plays a Marsh Flats. He goes to crack it, but Lutz responds with an opposition agent. Lutz gets the search and finds an Underground Sea, with Fernando also revealing his hand to the table. Fernando then moves to combat and swings Kenrith at Jimmy, who chumps with an elemental token from Marath. On his second main, Fernando casts a Temur Sabertooth, and at his end step, Jimmy adds another counter to the Ascension. Hidden untaps and plays a Dark Confidant. He makes a deal with Jimmy to get Angel immunity in exchange for not attacking him this turn. He passes and the Ascension gets its 3rd counter. Jimmy has a quick turn just playing a Mana Crypt, but at his end step, Lutz casts an Enlightened Tutor to find a Cursed Totem and put it on top of his library. Lutz on his turn immediately pays 1 life to the Necro to put the totem aside. He then pays 2 mana to cast a Diabolic Intent, sacrificing the Cloud Pirates. While he searches, Jimmy decides to flex his vocal cords.
Let's make angels. Let's make angels. Let's make angels. Let's make angels. This card is pretty good.
Lutz finds a card and moves to combat, swinging Malcolm and the opposition agent at Jimmy. But Jimmy passed the Malcolm before blockers. Lutz gets a tapped island and the agent gets chumped by another elemental. On his second main, Lutz pays 1 to the Necro, and at his end step, in response to Lutz gaining those cards, Fernando draws a card off Kenrith. And more importantly, the Ascension gets the last counter and Jimmy creates an Angel. Fernando wins his Mana Crypt trigger and plays an Exotic Orchard. He immediately moves to combat and swings at the Angel Master with Kenrith and the Temur Sabertooth. The Sabertooth connects while Kenrith gets blocked by the last token created by Marath. At his end step, Lutz Chain of Vapors targeting Kenrith. This forces a chain, leading Fernando to copy it to eventually get the Luminarch Ascension. But to go into more detail, Fernando responds by activating Kenrith to draw a card before the king is bounced. Fernando continues the chain by targeting the Grim Monolith and sacrificing his Exotic Orchard, which then lets Lutz copy it again by sacrificing his island and pointing the copy at Luminarch's Ascension. The stack resolves and Fernando hands the turn over to Hidden. Hidden on his turn reveals a Deathrite Shaman from his Dark Confidant. He then plays an Ancient Tymna's land and follows it up by casting said Shaman. Hidden finishes his turn by swinging his Hushbringer at Lutz for 1. Jimmy is safe from the Crypt Trigger, and everyone is wondering if he'll recast the Ascension.
So what are the odds Jimmy just recasts Luminarch?
I would rather have this giant meat stick.
He ends up recasting Marath instead and heads to combat. The Angel beats continue as Lutz gets slapped in the face for 4. Lutz has an Underground River as land and finally casts the Cursed Totem he tutored for. Jimmy responds by moving 2 counters from Marath to the Angel, with Fernando responding by activating the Temur Sabertooth to bounce his Eidolon back to hand. The totem resolves and Lutz ends up paying 2 life into the Necro, putting them into his hand at his end step. Fernando takes no damage from his crypt and plays a Dryad Arbor for turn. He recasts Kenrith and attacks Hidden for 4 with the Sabertooth. Hidden this time reveals the Linvala off the Confidant and takes 4, but just has to pass and do nothing. Jimmy loses his Crypt Trigger and plays a Flooded Strand. He starts off with an Earthcraft and surprisingly everyone lets it resolve. He then follows it up with a Skull Clamp, but this time he's not as fortunate as it gets countered by Lutz's Mental Misstep. He casts an Avacyn's Pilgrim and moves to combat. Marath heads at Lutz while the Angel swings at Fernando for 6. Lutz decides to cash in the opposition agent for Marath, and Jimmy recasts the card he finally wanted on the battlefield, Luminarch Ascension. Unfortunately for him, this one also gets countered by Lutz's Swan Song. Lutz plays a polluted delta for land and complains he really can't afford to fetch with it. At this point, Fernando, being the good person he is, reminds Lutz that he has an underground sea and the table lets him swap those 2 lands. With Jimmy taking this opportunity to crack his flooded strand for a savannah, Lutz needs a blocker and plays a laboratory maniac. He decides the risk is worth it and puts 3 into the necro and draws them at end step. Fernando takes 3 from the crypt and plays a Chrome Mox. He doesn't see much need for his bounced Eidolon and imprints it for white mana. He swings all out at Lutz, who goes down to 2, and on his main phase, Fernando board wipes, casting an overloaded dam. Hidden has a very sad turn, just drawing and heading straight to discard. Jimmy loses his crypt trigger and spends his mana recasting Marath, but it doesn't resolve as Fernando uses a Force of Will, pitching a Fierce Guardianship. Lutz, somehow still staying alive, doesn't draw and plays a polluted delta. He plays a Grim Monolith and hands the turn to Fernando. Fernando has a simple turn too, just winning the crypt roll and passing, leaving mana up. Hidden draws and finally drops a land, a Bloodstained Mire. The stupid...
Curse Totem?
Not the Curse Totem, but the anti-tutor card is dead already, so I guess I can crack that.
Opposition agent is dead.
There's an Aven Mind Sensor, though.
I guess I'll go
it's
crack Bloodstain.
It's this.
I have a response.
Oh god.
Oh god.
I'm sorry, Steve. I'm gonna take one.
What the fuck?
There is an Aven Mind Sensor.
Oh my god.
He's like, I'm not editing this.
I'm sorry.
I will find.
I tried to hold up mana.
Oh,
so
no
I didn't think of it. Oh, he found one!
Yeah.
No!
He got it. He's like, not thwarted this time.
That's the one I actually wanted too.
Damn. Okay.
But even with the newly accrued land, he just has to pass the turn. Jimmy wins his crypt trigger and plays a strip mine. He casts a tiny Serra Ascendant and finishes his turn with a Survival of the Fittest. Lutz at 1 life, skips his draw and casts Tymna. Deciding Tymna is a good enough blocker, he swings his Aven Mind Sensor at Jimmy in the air for 2. And at his end step, Fernando casts his own Aven, and Jimmy takes his chance to strip mine Fernando's Enchanted Tundra. Fernando wins his mana crypt roll and decides to keep the Curse Totem online by not taking Lutz out of the game. He once again passes with mana up. Hidden has another simple turn, just drawing and having to discard a Necropotence due to hand size. Jimmy gets bolted by his mana crypt and immediately recasts his commander for like the 20th time this game. Lutz, still alive somehow, tries to use Tymna for lifelink and attacks Hidden, but Hidden doesn't like the idea of being used like a punching bag and kills her with an Abrupt Decay. Lutz can't do much about it and finishes his turn with an Ancient Tomb. At his end step, Fernando swords Marath. On a funny note, this actually turns Jimmy's Serra Ascendant online. Fernando moves to his turn and attempts to cast Kenrith, which is a mistake as he miscounted, but it doesn't matter as Lutz counters it with a sweet mana drain. Disheartened at the outcome, Fernando swings at Jimmy for 2, putting him to 29 and turning the Serra Ascendants back into just a 1/1. Hidden untaps and plays an Imperial Seal as a last-ditch effort, being very aware that there's 2 Avens on the battlefield. It resolves, losing him 2 life, but he chooses to fail to find, deciding he'd rather just have the shuffle. Jimmy wins his mana crypt trigger and plays a Taiga for turn. Serra's Ascendant swings at Fernando, which gets Jimmy back to 30 health. Lutz untaps and doesn't draw. He gets colorless mana from the mana drain and recasts Tymna. He decides to hold off attacking as he does need those blockers. Fernando takes 3 from the crypt and plays a command tower as land. He casts his own Tymna and moves to combat. He swings his Aven at Jimmy and on his second main pays 1 life to draw a card. Hidden has a quick turn, just drawing and playing a Skull Clamp. Jimmy wins his crypt trigger and celebrates that he drew something sweet.
Ooh, this is a card.
He casts an Auron Frostfang and moves to combat. He swings the Serra Ascendant at Fernando, who lets it through due to the added Death Touch. Jimmy draws off the Snake's trigger and passes after that. Lutz untaps and skips his draw. He swings Tymna at Hidden, which this time she connects, gaining him 2 life, but he doesn't draw, instead taking 1 to play Malcolm. At his end of turn, Jimmy destroys Fernando's Soul Ring with an Ancient Grudge. Fernando is safe from the crypt trigger and plays a Wooded Foothills for turn. He attacks Jimmy with the Aven and Hidden with Tymna, and he gains 2, draws 2, and loses 2 from Tymna, but holds mana up as he hands the turn over to Hidden. Hidden doesn't have much of a turn, just untapping and passing. Jimmy takes 3 from his crypt and moves to combat. The Frostfang heads at Lutz, while the Ascendant goes at Fernando. Lutz blocks with the Mind Sensor, but Fernando doesn't. In response to the draw trigger, Fernando flashes in a Hull Breacher and creates a treasure. Jimmy on his second main phase casts a Finale of Devastation where X equals a lot, to which Lutz counters with a Force of Negation. Now seeing the opposing Mind Sensor gone, Fernando responds by cracking the fetch land to go find a Badlands, but doesn't have any further responses and the stack resolves. Lutz untaps and immediately moves to combat, getting 2 more life from Tymna by hitting Jimmy for 2. He doesn't draw with Tymna, but puts 2 life into the Necropotence, and moves to his end step. And in response to the Necro triggers, Fernando flashes in an Endurance, putting his own graveyard on the bottom of his library. Fernando untaps and takes 3 from his crypt. He casts a Praetor's Grasp, targeting Lutz to get a Windfall, but before he casts said Windfall, he plays a Deathrite Shaman, and then proceeds with the Windfall. Knowing that this would be the end, Hidden responds with a Dark Ritual into an Ad Nauseam, floating 1 black mana, to which Fernando responds by using 1 green to cast a Veil of Summer. Fernando draws, and at this point Hidden goes into full Ad Naus to see if there's anything in his deck that could stop the Wheel plus Hull Breacher combo, which would leave everyone with no cards and Fernando with a ton of board presence. Unfortunately for the table, he can't find anything, so the table decides to just scoop it to Fernando, as Hidden ends up with a lot of cards before the Windfall, and with all the added treasures and cards Fernando would gain, he can just tutor Dockside for a Finale of Devastation, play a meal, and then destroy the Cursed Totem with a Manglehorn, and use Kenrith and infinite mana to swing for the win, with infinitely large creatures with haste and trample. Game review. Oh boy, was that a long one. There were so many twists and turns to get that final result. Well, at least for everyone except Hidden. He did not have any luck on his side for this game. He did keep a decent hand, and I think trading with the Tymna was the right move. What actually hurt him before the whole board wipe was the opposition agent. His hand was actually filled with lots of tutors, and that basically stopped him from at least searching out the land drops he needed. And as I mentioned, after the Wrath, it was all over for him. As for the other players, the later part of the game became a weird balance over life totals and the Cursed Totem, as even though both Fernando and Jimmy were hurt by it, stopping the other person from activating abilities was necessary, even though it meant keeping Lutz alive. As for Lutz, I'm amazed that he lasted as long as he did on basically 1 life. It definitely turned into a minigame for himself to try and navigate the field when it's such a low life total. Hey guys, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I just wanted to let you know that we have a TCG affiliate link, and if you ever see a card you want to try or are inspired to brew something new, use our link when purchasing and we'll receive a small portion of the sale. This is a great way to support the channel, and if you enjoyed the gameplay, please leave a like and subscribe, as it really helps us keep making videos. And remember, never give up, even if you're dead on board. I'll see you guys later.